What do you see when you turn on the news? You see violence, you see division, and you see differences. It feels like the world is getting crazier, the just are oppressed, the truth is silenced, and the right are corrected. And you feel angry. Angry because there's not enough change, or angry because there is too much change. It feels like the world could be better. Well, there's good news for you. People are beginning to stand up against this madness. Political resistance is on the rise, and those who share your ideas are speaking out. We are heading towards a very obvious future. Future of... But to continue, we need to ask, why is this happening now? Why now that political violence and extremism is becoming more severe? Well, the answer lies in something I call experienced injustice. Picture this, you barely make $1 in savings while others have millions in their banks. Would you be angry? Angry enough to do something about it?
Huel, you happy?
Reasonably.
But what I've just described is the comparison between average American savings and the wealth of billionaires. But we don't see people storming the barricades of Amazon or Microsoft.
Microsoft!
So why aren't we angry? Well, it's because that dollar can still afford you a living. It doesn't matter the perceived injustice, the huge disparity between billionaires and us. You're all good as long as you can eat, sleep, and watch YouTube while you eat and until you sleep. But what if that were to change? What if, for instance, you could no longer afford the cost of living? When your salary can't cover your rent, a healthy meal turns into a luxury, and the very act of raising kids becomes a dream. When you no longer perceive injustice but actually experience it. Well, that is when the difference between you and the billionaires becomes more meaningful. So why is it becoming more difficult to live? Let's take a look at 19th century Alan Moore impersonator Karl Marx. In the theory of conflict, Marx says that world history is nothing but a history of oppression, patricians and plebeians, slavers and slaves, and in modern society, capitalists and workers. The oppressed have fought their oppressors for centuries, but what marks a change is that now the oppressed are more unified than ever. This is what Marx called class consciousness. In other words, we share similar conditions and goals with those in our social class. For the workers, it's all about higher wages and affordable living, while the capitalists want more profit. Marx notes that the class consciousness of workers and capitalists are fundamentally at odds. When workers ask for higher pay, capitalists worry about making less money. To make up for that loss, the companies might force workers to piss in bottles or be stricter with efficiency. When it reaches a point where workers can barely afford a living, they will see that the capitalists are the true enemies to their survival. But hey, that's just a theory, a Marx theory. In reality, the capitalists are not that cruel to let people starve. It's not like they would deliberately increase the price of products during a massive pandemic to reap enormous profit.
Wait a minute!
Let's be honest, you don't have to be a Marxist to agree with some of the Marxian arguments, and it is very clear the conflict between the working class and the capitalists does seem inevitable. Well, there is a very simple yet effective method of preventing the workers from uniting. You know what it is. The very reason why you're here is because you're part of it. You probably pretend to hate it, but let's be honest, you already picked a side in it. Yeah, it's the motherfucking culture war. Let's take a little detour and talk about modern progressivism, namely gay rights. Think about it, why do we see fewer openly gay people in some of the world's poorest countries like South Sudan, Somalia, or Mozambique? Is it because richer countries just happen to be more gay?
Why are you gay?
Well, some progressives will argue that it's because they face brutal oppression and even deaths in these countries. That is true, but not the whole truth. We need to ask, why are they being oppressed in the first place then? You see, as countries become wealthier, they tend to become more socially progressive. When citizens don't have to worry about their next meal and have some economic stability, they're more likely to explore and support new perspectives. The same principle holds true for our own nations. If we want people in rural areas to embrace more socially progressive ideas, the key lies in improving their economic circumstances. Social progressivism can only work when we can afford it. Another prime example of a culture war centers around immigration. Many conservative workers are worried about illegal immigrants, and rightfully so. Increased immigration means more available workers, potentially driving down wages for everyone. But let's not kid ourselves, it's not the fault of the immigrants for wage reductions. The real issue lies in the choices made by multinational corporations to hire cheaper labor, which ultimately harms the working class. The correct course of action should be to protect the wages of the workers regardless of whether they are immigrants or citizens. There are so many instances like these where the culture war has divided the progressive and conservative working class.
I've got to get out of here. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Stewardess, please let me handle this.
I've got to get
Calm down. Now get back to your seat. I'll take care of this. Calm down. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, you're wanted on the phone. Everything's going to be all right. Please.
Sister, please, I'll handle this.
I've got to get out of here. Out of here. Out of here. I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. Out of here. I've got to get out of here.
So what's the solution? How can we escape the matrix that is the culture war? Well, that is where I become a bit gloomy and doomy. We sort of can't. Let's face it, not enough people are starving at the moment and the class consciousness isn't fully formed. When you can still grab a snack and binge watch The Good Place without worrying about basic survival, the urgency to unite against the capitalists seems less compelling. And the media and algorithms aren't at fault either. With our attention span less than a minute, the economic struggle and the debate for financial policies don't really sound as interesting as the latest cultural or social controversy.
Of designing and building factories. So that puts us in the manufacturing sector.
Wait, Snow White's black? So what do? Well, they keep pushing these divisive cultural narratives. Either intentionally or unintentionally, they're diverting our focus from class solidarity. And here we are, knowingly trapped in the matrix and willingly maintaining it. As long as the real threat of hunger and economic hardship doesn't hit hard enough, the class consciousness will remain fragmented and the culture war will persist. At this point, you're probably wondering, am I biased? Feck yeah, I'm biased. Don't trust anyone who says they're not. This video is based on Marx's idea that conflict is an inherent part of capitalism. What I'm saying does not make any sense if you don't blame the capitalists for the rising cost of living. Now, there are other viewpoints out there. Some believe that it's the government's fault, blaming them for high inflation and subsequent increase in the cost of living. Others think it's just an economic cycle and things will naturally get better in the next few years. Now, these people are rallying behind movements aimed at curbing government spending and influence. This gave rise to socially conservative and economically liberal politicians like Donald Trump or Javier Milei. If you would like to know more about it, you'll probably have to wait another 50 years for my next video. And on that note, thanks for watching this video, and check again for another episode of Layman History that has nothing to do with history.